Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It is wonderful to see all of you. While I have spotlighted the video, so you can only see us, I can still see all of you. It is always wonderful to gather on Shabbat. We will have the liturgy as we have over the past several weeks on the screen in front of you, and/or if you can see that link at the bottom of the screen, and/or I will go put it in the chat in a moment when Courtney is singing. If it is easier to follow along from the flip book itself, we're trying to give as many options as possible depending on what your text setup is. And so with that, we'll turn to Welcome Shabbat with page 3 in our Mishkan Halev, and Courtney will be singing Hine Matov.
Hine matov u'manayim, hine matov u'manayim, hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, hine matov u'manayim, hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, hine matov, hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, hine matov, hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. We will continue together with the words of Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Olam Chesed Yibaneh, yadadai, 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 yadadai. 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 I will build. I will build this world from love. Yadadai, 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 yadadai. And you must build this world from love. Yadadai, 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 yadadai. And if we build this world from love, yadadai, 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 then God will build this world from love. Yadadai, 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 yadadai. Ooh, yadadai, 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 yadadai.
So we turn to page 6. Elul, an island into the year. Before we slip too quickly into the season of the soul, let there be a Sabbath of Sabbaths for the heart. Before the music of creation's majesty, let there be a silent praise of existence. Before the feast of sanctified words, let there be a poetry of solitude. Before we enter the palaces of prayer, let us find within ourselves a place of calm. Before we revel in the wondrous and sublime, Let there be an honest inward gaze. Before the rites and ceremonies of awe, let there be quieter days, an island of attentiveness. And on page 7, now is the time for turning. The leaves are beginning to turn from green to red and orange. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south. The animals are beginning to turn toward storing their food for the winter. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means admitting that we have been wrong. And this is never easy. It means losing face. It means starting all over again. And this is always painful. It means saying, I am sorry. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are terribly hard to do, but unless we turn, we will be trapped forever in yesterday's ways. God, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Turn us around and bring us back to you. Revive our lives as at the beginning, and turn us toward each other, for in isolation there is no life.
And I invite those of you who would like to join me in lighting our candles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. And we continue together with the words of Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Toachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, V'melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu Nir Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, V'melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shuvchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, V'melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'tkadash miraba, ve'alma divrach yotev yamlich malchuti, b'chayechonu chomechon, uv'chayede kol bet Yisrael, bagala, bagala, uv'izman kariv, v'yimru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach, me'ala mulal me'al maya, yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, yitbahar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yithalel, קדושה בריחו, נהלה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, ושפחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ויאמרו אמן.
There is no human being who does not carry a treasure in the soul, a moment of insight, a memory of love, a dream of excellence, a call to worship.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam vaed.
Holy is twilight, the realm of in-between, and so our sages taught, pray in the moments when light and darkness touch. We are all twilight people, beyond categories and labels. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, widen our vision. Let it illumine our way to the God who transcends all boundaries and definitions. Blessed are you, God of all, who brings on the twilight. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. Open up our eyes. Teach us how to live. Fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael, for you are blessed, the one who loves your people Israel.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. You may be seated if you were standing. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'ribarata bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני, אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני, אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem, Emet. Truth and faith. These are fundamental to our existence. God alone is their source, and we are Israel, a people of God. Our sovereign saves us from tyranny, redeems us from its violence through countless wonders, from its brutality through great feats beyond measure. We are Israel, a people of God, the giver of life, who would not let our feet give way, the maker of miracles for us against Pharaoh, of signs and portents in the land of Egypt, the one who brought our people Israel from its midst to enduring freedom.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot, o sefela, nora tehilot, o sefela. Malechutecha, rahu vanecha, okayam. Lifnei Moshe, Zeilianu ve'amru, Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch, leolam va'ed. V'ne'amar kifada Adonai et Yaakov, ugalo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
Amen. Bless our sleep with peace, Adonai, and awaken us to life when we rise. With power sublime, spread over us your shelter of shalom, and through your wisdom, restore us, make us whole. Let your name proclaim your presence in our lives. Be our shield. Make us stronger than the enemies we face, illness and war, famine and sorrow, and stronger than the enemies in our hearts, wickedness and sin. Carry us to safety as on wings. For you are the monarch of grace, the sovereign of compassion. You are the one who cares for us and sets us free. Watch over us, we who go forth to life. Watch over us that we may come home in peace, now and till the end of time. Baruch atah Adonai, Hapores Sukkot Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Amo Yisrael, Ve'al Yerushalayim. Blessed One, you spread over us a canopy of peace, a shelter of shalom over all Israel, your people, and over Jerusalem. The act of stopping to refresh oneself by taking a breath, the word vayinafash from nefesh, or meaning breath, soul, life. This act of stopping is intrinsic to the experience of Shabbat. Renewing our souls on the seventh day is both life-saving and conducive to spiritual growth. Our sages believed that on the Sabbath, we are endowed with a higher level of awareness, perhaps because we take the time to stop and breathe. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, the Holy One gives an extra soul to a human being on the eve of Shabbat. When Shabbat leaves, that extra soul departs. The additional soul helps us leave behind the turmoil of the week and experience the joy of Shabbat. Please rise if you are able.
I'll ask those who are willing and able to please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agitilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם וזרע שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מחלקי לחיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, תומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונת ישני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומרום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
A year of your goodness, your crowning gift, your paths grow lush with oil drop by drop. Pastures for grazing thrive in the wilderness, and the hills are encircled with joy. Flocks of sheep clothe spacious fields, and the valleys wear garments of grain. Filled to bursting, they shout, they praise, in exultant song of delight. The sea pushes back off the shore, yielding to gravity with a sigh, not leaving, but a letting go, a retreat into its own deep fullness. The sun relinquishes its hold on the sky, only to rise once more at daybreak. As the tide rolls back in, a different kind of letting go, an unspooling across the expanse, as we creatures of earth are granted a fresh start, a chance to gather the debris and shape the world anew. Wholeness is a kind of holiness, the stasis of perfection, but brokenness demands recreation, a churning cycle of endings and beginnings, the act of pulling hope and brightness from the wreckage, taking the jagged shards and making of them, if not wholeness, a new sort of sacred splendor.
Ritzei, Ritzei, Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, ve'amcha Yisrael, u'tefilatam, ve'ahavat tekabel, u'tehil ratzon tamid, u'tehil ratzon tamid, Avodat Yisrael Amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Amachazir Shechinato L'Tzion, Amachazir Shechinato L'Tzion.
For all these gifts I received today, air in my lungs, pulse in my veins, my restless mind alive and curious, awakening suddenly to beauty, for love and the memory of love, forgiveness when I didn't deserve it, another chance at life. Let my soul give thanks to you. Let me not forget your kindness. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Hasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Hasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. V'tov b'necha levarich et amcha Yisrael bechol Amo Yisrael Bashalom. We now take a moment for silent prayer and reflection. Ratzon imrei fi ve'yon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri vegoali.
I unmuted myself and my Devar Torah went away. There it is. Time's been a funny thing this year. I have found myself often needing to remind myself what day or date it is, as in a way they've all seemed like they're blurring together. Today, September 11th, that blur of time is far from the case. Just this morning in our weekly 8:30 a.m. Zoom call, another of the Dayton clergy mentioned, in the context of a different comment, quote, "We all remember where we were 19 years ago today." And I looked at the clock. It was almost to the minute of the towers being hit. Throughout the day, the lyrics of the song, "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning That September Day," have been floating through my head. And then I thought about that comment, and it's apt that Ethan is on the call because I think I referenced September 11th when we were in DC earlier this year. And they pointed out that they were not yet alive. And I think I was the youngest one on this Zoom call with the Dayton area clergy. And while yes, I remember, I'm not that young. I was in my middle school English classroom, the bell about to ring, practicing my Torah verses for that Shabbat. Our current college freshmen were likely born in 2001. Already, the seniors graduating this year already probably don't remember. They would have only been about 3. So now that I've made us all feel a little bit old, except for Ethan, I've been keenly aware in my rabbinic work that we're rapidly approaching a time when the last of the Holocaust survivors are leaving this world or are becoming incapable of sharing their stories, and what that will mean for the generation of youth that we're teaching who won't be able to hear those stories directly from the survivors, as I and I assume almost all of us on this call have, but rather they'll be learning about it through the history books as if something of the distant past. I've also, in the years that I've been in Ohio, become more aware that having grown up a 2-hour drive from the World Trade Center Plaza, the experience of 9/11 was a little bit different than for those that were geographically more distant. Though I was younger, people I knew lived and worked in New York City, in the World Trade Center towers, even on the floors that were hit. I remember my world stopping turning as my teacher, with tears streaming down her face, turned on the TV, and we watched the remainder of the events unfold that morning as we sat in lockdown for hours until the school decided to close early for the day and sent us all home. And I remember 3 days later, Friday night, when I was called to the Torah as bat mitzvah for the most well-attended Shabbat service in the history of that congregation, despite the fact that we only invited 10 guests. Because although the world felt like it stopped turning, it didn't. Although it felt like life as we knew it might be changing and uncertainty lie ahead, there was something in Shabbat that we could cling to. That Torah portion that I was practicing in English class on Tuesday morning, or just before English class, possibly a little bit during, was Parshat Nitzavim, the same portion that we read and study this Shabbat, this anniversary of those fateful events. And I thought, how do I tie the anniversary of 9/11 back to our Torah portion? And I came up with at least 4 different answers, and to be completely honest, I couldn't choose between them, so I will give you the teasers of all of them to give you fodder to think about or talk about with those around you this Shabbat. So I thought I could start with the opening of the portion, the verses that I read 19 years ago, and quote, "You stand, all of you, this day before Adonai your God." And then it goes through all different types of people in the community and continues with those who are with us here today and those who are not with us here today. And that seemed a little bit loaded as we remember, particularly today, those who perished at the towers at the Pentagon, the civilians that helped bring Flight 93 down in that Pennsylvania field, the first responders that risked their lives to save others, the troops deployed overseas in America's response. Perhaps we don't know them personally, but today we recall their loss. And at the same time, we recognize in this Torah portion that it's that line about those who are not with us here today is generally understood as meaning the generations to come. And it seemed like this really interesting intertwining of the past, the present, and the future as this portion and September 11th coincide together more exactly than they do in most years. I could have quoted from a little bit later in the portion when it's referring to the Torah being near to us, being close to us, in our mouths and in our hearts to observe it. And I could teach that it's in our mouths and hearts to share the story, to live the lessons that we learned around September 11th of being strong and resilient and working against some of the xenophobia that we saw in the days and weeks coming or that followed 9/11. I could go closer to the end of the portion, which we'll hear in just like 2 weeks with Yom Kippur, the famous command, uvacharta b'chayim, to choose life. That when the world stopped turning that day, the first responders chose life. They chose to risk their lives to go in and save as many as they could. There were those that were in the armed forces that chose to protect this country. And there were those that were perhaps showing bravery in choosing life in the days and weeks that followed by getting on planes. It wouldn't have been my top choice of activity the next day. Our lives too, as we live through this pandemic, as we live through the entire list of things that have happened in 2020 that would take up the entire sermon for the evening, it sort of feels like we're back in that place of the world stopped turning and we don't know what it's going to look like or when it's going to be back to normal. And we can consider how to choose life. And it's also a double portion. Nitzavim is fairly frequently tied or combined with Vayelech, which follows, in which Moses writes down the teaching and commands the Israelites to put this written down teaching, the Torah, into the Ark of the Covenant. And if you stop and remember that at this point, Moses, Joshua, Caleb, these are the last of their generation. That was the whole point of the wandering, is that generation did not get to enter into the land of Israel. They're writing down this teaching for the generations to come. for the generations, for the Israelites around them that didn't witness the plagues or the splitting of the sea that they did. Everyone else had come of age or was born after those events. So what I could challenge you in, what will we do to preserve our story in the next generation? And as I said, short answer, couldn't decide which of those to focus on. So I gave you them all. And because of the proximity of this portion to, or the proximity of Nitzavim as my bat mitzvah portion to September 11th, but also the proximity of those two events altogether, I've been keenly aware of this portion, where it falls in the time of year and not just in relation to high holidays. But just as we read the Torah with a slightly different perspective and with the wisdom of the experience of the past year to guide us, so too perhaps we see 9/11 a little bit differently. And so as I was looking and reflecting on September 11th this year, 19 years later, and that song, "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning," going through my head, I wanted to add the question, how have we been, not just where we were, not just that snapshot of history, but how have we been part of making it turn and turn and turn again? And especially this year, amid our own challenges, amid the chaos of 2020, what will we do to keep our world turning? And I'll leave you with that for this Shabbat.
Yishar kochech. Rabbi Sobo, if you would like to re-spotlight, I had taken that off. Thank you. Mishaberach avotenu ve'imotenu, mishivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim. May the one who has blessed and kept our ancestors in every generation through all the troubles, trials, tribulations, and health concerns of every generation, even one that was just 20 years ago, which I hadn't realized what a generation difference that was. But may you, O God, who has been with us through all of these times, continue to bring healing and blessing to all who are in need of healing and blessing among us. Baruch atah Adonai rofei hacholim. Blessed are you, O God, the healer of those in need of healing. And today we think especially of James Hockman, Robin Kent, Judith Perlman, Rachel Magdalene, Lorna Kundert, Jan Berman, Jerry Butler, Robin Moore, Stephanie Noble, Gail Russick, Melinda Glovka, Mike Ammons, Helen Fine, Jeremy Wise, Paul Levine, Ed Bulin, Harvey Olson, Christine Wagner, Tracy Huddleston, Joe McKenna, Ellen Goodrich, Mark Romanowski, Jerry McDonald, Richard Lieberman, Joel Pinsker, Marty Sacker, Laura Holtzinger-Levin, Avraham Ben Avraham Vesara, Dave Bussey, Ron Levine, Jay Bainbridge, Chelsea Smith, Shava Eta, Rory Freistler, and Deborah Seidel, and all who we call into our minds at the moment, as we join together for the words in front of us of Misha Berach.
Yisher Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Yisher Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with
shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
For those who are able, I ask you to rise for Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts now turn to loved ones whom death has taken from us in recent days. We are in a period of Aninut for Bernice Ezekiel Brandt, a period of Shiva for Thelma Karp, and a period of Shloshim for Benson Shaman and Hyla Weiskind. We also remember those who died at this season in years past. Our hearts open as well to the wider circles of loss in our community and wherever grief touches the human family. We call to mind Beulah Stern Boyd, Beatrice F. Brooke, Billy V. Carpenter, Moses Kramer, Jacob A. Donnenfeld, Jonathan Ezekiel, Ida Gottlieb, Diane Handler, Jack Hockman, Erwin H. Hollander, Faye R. Israel, Irvin A. Kahn, Ida Claren, Joan Klug, Julius Kotler, Philip Lang, Mayor Liebensberger, Benjamin Lehman, Abraham Levinson, I. Jacob Levinson, Shirley Levine, Rabbi Stephen Levinson, Alexander Levitt, James J. Lewis, Abraham Moltz, Hyman Patterson, Ross Pincus, Irene Pohl, Archie Raffle, Dorothy Ryderband, Max Scheiner, Henry P. Schwartz, Robert A. Shapiro, Walter Shaw, Ptahotep Smith, Goldie Stein, Gertrude K. Sussman, Rebecca Price Tall, Eva Weber, Harry M. Weinstein, Arnold Wolfson, Esther Boyer, and all, of course, who perished as a result of those acts that occurred 19 years ago. We hold them all in our hearts and remember them with love as we call to mind the words of Kaddish. And I'd like to invite those who are in mourning or remembering to please rise first. And then we as a community, if you are able, rise as well to recite the words of Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chai echon v'yom echon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha berichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, huya asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imavru. Amen. May their memories always be for a blessing. Zichronam Zichronam livracha. Return, Israel, to the one who takes you back in love. The shofar is sounded from the first day of Elul until the eve of Rosh Hashanah to signal the approaching days of awe. The sound of the shofar implores us to engage in cheshbon hanefesh, an accounting of the soul. This shofar sounds, and I am awake, shaken out of the days of sleep. I see the truth. The day of judgment approaches. Soon we will stand before the one who can't be flattered or fooled. Soon we will stand in the courtroom of conscience. Soon we will know the joy of beginning again. And if you would, we are all going to recite those blessings together, because this is not the blessing for blowing the shofar. It is the blessing for hearing the shofar, which we are all going to do. So we say, Baruch atah Adonai shomea teruah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who hears the soundings of the shofar. And the shofar is sounded, actually, Teen Rabbi Sobo, did you have yours? Yours is bigger than mine. It's, you know.
I think I have a ringer coming in too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you came up. Okay. Should mommy do
I thought you were talking about her. I thought Stephanie was the ringer. Okay.
She's going pretty good.
I know. All right, are you ready?
Steph, can you stay off the bed because the candles are lit?
Next week you get the real one.
Okay.
Tekiah. Shivarim teruah.
Yeah, gotta get it right.
Tekiah.
I want to try now.
I think your ringer just showed up.
Yeah.
I don't think he's happy. But I'm excited that we are so close to this new year. Oh, nicely done.
Yeah, she can do it better than I can.
Yeah.
That's on a
This
weekly
time-
practice.
I'd say right now my children are not aware that it's being blown, so we're good. So here we are. We will now join together for our blessing over our wine or our grape juice. And Courtney, take it away.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzoni hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'chalta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat l'chaim. L'chaim.
L'chaim. Oh my God, this smells so good. This is around challah for the new year, which will remind you, I hope, that that's our tradition. So next Friday is, of course, that is round. With Rosh Hashanah, that perhaps you will have a round challah. If you would like, you can order them from Evan's Bakery. I think you still have a little bit more time. And oh my gosh, this has apples and cinnamon in it, and it smells so good. My niece Rachel made it, and she's also the one who helped provide some of the recipe that they'll be using at Evan's. So it smells delicious.
You have until Monday, September 14th to order your challah from Evans if you want to pick it up at our Rosh Hashanah drive-through event either on Thursday or Friday of next week.
I believe also your Bernstein's dinners.
Yes, as well.
Right.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, b'tei avon.
B'tei avon. I wish I could have a piece of Rabbi Karen's right now.
Oh my gosh. So she made two. This one is the apples with cinnamon one. The other one is chocolate on the inside. So we saved the chocolate one for Rosh Hashanah, but there was no way we were going to eat two of them in, a couple days. So we started early. But
See nothing wrong with that.
oh my God, it's delicious.
Good Shabbos, everyone. Thank you so much for a lovely, lovely service.
Thank you. Good Shabbos to you. And honestly, if you guys would like to stay